Week 9, game number 8 for the Colorado Buffaloes, and coming off of the bye, Adam, it's not an easy one. You got to go to number 23 UCLA at the Rose Bowl, and a team that is beatable, but CU hasn't beaten them there in the Rose Bowl since they've been in the Pac-12, and so this will be an interesting matchup this week.
It's been interesting just to watch the UCLA program since Chip Kelly got hired there. I don't know if I would say it was a home run hire when he got hired, but just based on what he did at Oregon, you figure that was a great fit for UCLA with having so many talented skill guys in your backyard to recruit. And he's built the program up differently than I expected. It's almost kind of on some lines when you look at – I mean, they still have the up-tempo that they go, because Colorado and UCLA have had the most plays offensively this year, but it's an offense right now that's predicated on the ground game and basically just asking your quarterback not to make a lot of mistakes, and their freshman quarterback was making some mistakes, so they made a change there.
It's interesting. This series has been interesting throughout the years, right? There's been so many weird things that have happened, but I remember CU's last visit just 2 years ago to the Rose Bowl, and there was actually talk of Chip Kelly getting fired, and CU, if fans remember, was leading 20-10 in that game. It was 20-7 at one point. I think UCLA hit a field goal at the end of the first half, but I remember being in the press box at halftime. They're talking about Chip Kelly. If they don't come back, this could be his last game. Well, they come back and they score 30 straight points in the second half, win 40-20. I think they routed USC, I think, the next week or something like that. But he ends up getting a contract extension, and the catalyst was that win against CU, that comeback, and so very different from the last time we've gone there. Chip Kelly is definitely not on the hot seat at this point. I mean, he's got this program where he, I think, wanted it to be from the start, but it took a little while. Yeah,
and they finished last season ranked, so they are definitely on the right trajectory. But Colorado has actually had a 10-win season more recently than UCLA has, and just traditionally it seems like that's one of the programs you would point to that just seems to underachieve based on their recruiting base there. But it is crazy. It was like a Gary Pinkel moment. When Gary Pinkel was at Missouri, he would get on the hot seat to that point of almost getting fired. I think it was maybe 4 times during his tenure at Missouri, he would find a way to get that big win. And that's what I was thinking of with Chip Kelly, is just he's got kind of that staying power. But I don't even know if folks are all that happy with him, because he hasn't recruited to the level that Lincoln Riley has. And he's taken a little bit of a different approach than he did when he was at Oregon and had all those Nike resources. So it seems like a pretty fundamentally sound football program, but it's not on that next level. I think when they go up against the top 15 programs, that's when they get exposed. So it's a good program, but I really don't know if this is a team that is really contending for conference championships as it's constructed.
Right, and the interesting thing this year is that this is Chip Kelly's first year without Dorian Thompson-Robinson as the starting quarterback, and I thought they would maybe take a step back in that regard, but they're sitting here at 5-2. They've played 3 different quarterbacks. They've managed to get through it somehow. The freshman, like you said, Dante Moore, has struggled a little bit. Ethan Garbers has played admirably at times, and they've also had Colin Schlee a little bit, who was Coach Lewis's quarterback at Kent State last year. And so they've had a number of guys, but the biggest difference is they're finally playing defense and playing really good defense. And their defense has not been good the last several years. All of a sudden, they're first or second place in the Pac-12 in just about every category right now.
Yeah, I think the ideal scenario that they wanted is because they signed Dante Moore, this 5-star quarterback, and the competition was close enough that let's throw him in there and get him this experience and really grow the program around him. Well, when they got in conference play, he just started turning the ball over. And when you're playing great defense and when you got a great ground game, you can't have that out of your quarterback. So you go back to Ethan Garbers for the majority of that Stanford game. And it's kind of downgrading a quarterback when you say this, but it's true. He's more of a game manager. Ethan Garbers is not keeping defensive coordinators up at night. But what worries you, is can Colorado score enough points, given that Colorado's defense hasn't showed that they've been consistently able to stop people? And then you look at the ground game. This is, to me, if Vonta Bentley is in there starting, this is a game where he's a key player. This needs to be his best game as a Buff when you go against Steele, who's kind of a throwback running back, a transfer from Ball State that can get tough yards. So if Trevor Woods is playing linebacker, I mean, those guys have to play really physical football and have a big game, and I think that's a concern going into this contest.
Yeah, and you mentioned game manager, but when you have a really good defense and a running game, a game managing quarterback is what you need. Colorado is kind of the opposite. They don't have that defense. They don't have the run game. You need a dynamic quarterback like Shedeur Sanders. So this is going to be an interesting matchup, and these teams are totally different in that regard. I agree with you. That's where the Trevor Woods at linebacker is sort of interesting because he's that undersized linebacker. You're an undersized defense with him in there. We've talked about that, but not only the linebackers, but the front line for CU has got to play its best game. Shane Cokes, we got to see him step up. We got to see Amari McNeil. Bishop Thomas didn't play the Stanford game. Not sure why. If he can get in there and make some plays, I mean, they've got to have those guys in the front seven make some plays near the line of scrimmage for them to have a shot.
Yeah, and I wish I knew how well Colorado's offensive line is going to play in this game as we get into prediction mode, because the UCLA front is pretty scary based off some of the stuff we've seen from poor performance protecting Shedeur. And so this, again, becomes kind of a Sean Lewis game. Can you scheme to get the ball out of Shedeur's hands? And we heard Tim Brewster say earlier this week that this is an important week for the running game in our program as well. And does Anthony Hankerson get 20 carries? Does he get a rhythm going offensively? I think my head says that everything points to this being a really tough matchup for Colorado. Something about my gut with UCLA having played 2 back-to-back road games and Colorado coming off this bye, plus the disappointment of what happened in Stanford, and this Colorado program, again, with their backs against the wall and kind of this us against the world mentality, which they had coming into the season, and it worked out well for them at TCU. My gut says that Colorado comes out and finds a way to win this football game, but I don't think I can, in good conscience, do that based on just the matchups we've been talking about.
So what is your prediction?
I think it's going to be a close football game, and I think it's going to be a fun atmosphere, which is not usually what you say about the Rose Bowl for a regular season game.
Right.
I mentioned it earlier in the week. It's an electric atmosphere for the Rose Bowl, but UCLA, they just have not gotten the support, and it makes sense. It's 45 minutes away from campus. Traffic is horrible in Pasadena on Saturdays. So, but it's the last game for Colorado out in L.A. It's not a true sellout, but they're calling it a sellout. So there's, 70,000 tickets sold. I think there's going to be a lot of CU fans in the stadium, so it's going to be a closer game than what the odds makers think. But until I see Shedeur Sanders get protected and see this team put together a full game, it's going to be hard for me to pick an upset in a game where they're 17-point underdogs. So my long-winded answer to that is UCLA wins this game 31-30.
Okay. Wow, that is a close one. So the tarp out here is kind of a preview of the tarps we're going to see at UCLA, though they'll be in the stands to cover up some of those seats that aren't being sold. But I'm with you in your thinking in that, I like Colorado in this game coming off of that performance and kind of the energy they're going to get off of that and that bad taste in their mouth. They want to get rid of it. Coming off the bye, Shedeur Sanders mentioned before the TCU game, we almost had too much time to prepare. That's why we were so good offensively. I think giving them an extra week, helps. I think this team needed a bye week, and I think that that they're going to come out strong in this one. And I think for the first time this year, I'm going to go differently from your prediction. I think you and I are going to have a different prediction here. I'm actually going to pick the upset. And again, everything says that UCLA is going to win this football game, but I just kind of like those factors going for Colorado. In a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense to pick Colorado. I'm going to go with it anyway, and I'm going to say the Buffs win 27-24.
Okay. So you trust your gut, and I don't. So that's what it comes down to.
I trust my gut, and we'll see. We'll see what happens at the end. But I think this is going to be I think both of us obviously are picking a closer game than the odds makers think it's going to be. I think the Buffs are going to come out and have a good performance after what happened the last time they played.
Well, having covered Coach Prime here since last December, most of what he says comes true.
Yeah.
The one thing I would disagree with, and you've asked him a couple times about the timing of the bye week, and you said, I think this program needed a break. And I agree with you. I know Coach Prime, again, going back to what we said earlier this week, is such a competitor that he wants to get back out there and right those wrongs right away. But it just really felt like around here that it had been such a long, exhausting stretch. And so I really did think it came at a good time, and I can't wait to see what that looks like out at the Rose Bowl on Saturday.
Yeah, well, and we talked about earlier this week, but I think there's a big reason why he gave those guys 4 days off. I think that he sensed they needed it as well. He probably needed it too. So we'll see how they come out of it. Adam, I'll be back after the game to talk about it.